March 22nd, 1945, 10:47 p.m. The west bank of the Rhine River, near Oppenheim, Germany. The water moved black and silent under a moonless sky. No searchlights, no artillery preparation, no massed bomber formations overhead painting the night with fire. Just the Rhine, 300 yards wide at this point, cold as iron, moving south through the heart of a collapsing empire. On the eastern shore, German sentries strained to hear anything unusual over the river's endless whisper. They had been told for weeks that when the Americans came, when Patton came, the sky would turn to flame first. That's how it always happened. That's how the Rhine crossings were supposed to unfold. Montgomery was doing it that way right now, 150 miles north, with 25,000 paratroopers, 3,000 artillery pieces, and enough logistics to invade a continent. But here, in this quiet bend near Oppenheim, there was only darkness, and that darkness was about to crack open. Lieutenant Colonel Edwin Booth sat in the lead assault boat, an M2 plywood craft that felt like it was held together by hope and rivets. Around him, men from the 5th Infantry Division gripped their rifles with hands gone numb from the cold. Nobody spoke. The only sounds were the low hum of the outboard motor and the rhythmic slap of water against the hull. Booth checked his watch. The entire operation had been planned in less than 36 hours. No rehearsals, no elaborate deception. Patton had simply looked at the map, pointed to Oppenheim, and said the words that would define the next 12 hours. We're crossing tonight, before anyone knows we're there. The boat cut through the current. Booth could see the far shore now, a black smudge against a slightly less black sky. Somewhere in that darkness were German positions. Somewhere in that darkness were machine gun nests, artillery observers, telephone lines running back to headquarters, where men would soon be screaming into receivers trying to explain what should have been impossible. The first boats touched the eastern shore at 10:52 p.m. Silence, then boots hitting mud, the soft metallic click of rifle bolts being checked, whispered commands in English cutting through the German night. The assault teams moved inland, low and fast, toward the first line of fortifications that intelligence said would be lightly held. Intelligence had been wrong about many things in this war. Tonight, they were exactly right. The German defenders at Oppenheim numbered fewer than 200 men. Most were Volkssturm, the home guard, boys too young and men too old, armed with rifles that jammed and convictions that had long since crumbled. They had been told the Rhine was impassable, that even if the Americans tried, the Luftwaffe would appear, that reinforcements would come, that the river itself was a fortress. They learned otherwise in the space of 15 minutes. The first German position fell without a shot being fired. The sentries had been asleep. The second position managed to fire one burst from an MG-42 before being overrun. By 11:20 p.m., American infantry controlled a bridgehead 400 yards deep. By midnight, engineers were ferrying across heavier equipment. By 12:30 a.m., the first tanks were rolling off rafts onto German soil. And still, no one at German high command knew it was happening. At Oberkommando West Headquarters, 90 miles east in Bad Homburg, Field Marshal Albert Kesselring was reviewing reports from Montgomery's crossing operation to the north. That was the main effort. That was where the war would be decided, where the final great battle for the Rhine would unfold with all the ceremony and violence that such moments demanded. Kesselring had positioned his reserves accordingly. He had stripped the Oppenheim sector to reinforce the north. The telephone on his desk rang at 1:43 a.m. The voice on the other end belonged to a frantic captain from the 22nd Volksgrenadier Division. The words came fast, broken by static and panic. Americans, across the Rhine, at Oppenheim, in strength, tanks already over, bridgehead expanding. Kesselring's first response was disbelief. His second was to demand confirmation. His third was to realize, with the cold clarity that comes only in the worst moments of command, that George Patton had just done the unthinkable. He had crossed the Rhine without air support, without a massive artillery barrage, without any elaborate preparations that every military doctrine said were absolutely necessary. He had simply looked at the river, found the weakest point, and walked across in the dark. Kesselring began issuing orders immediately: mobilize the reserves, counterattack at dawn, seal the bridgehead before it could expand, destroy the crossing sites. But even as he spoke the words, he understood the mathematics of disaster. His reserves were 40 miles away, his air force was grounded by fuel shortages, his artillery was scattered across a 200-mile front, and Patton's engineers were already constructing a pontoon bridge that would be operational by morning. By 3 a.m., the bridgehead was over a mile deep. By 4:15 a.m., the first American armored columns were pushing east toward Frankfurt. By dawn, Patton would have 8,000 men across. By the end of the day, an entire division. Back at Third Army headquarters, in a converted schoolhouse 20 miles west of the Rhine, George Patton sat at a field desk and composed the message he would send to Supreme Headquarters. It was brief, characteristic, and calculated to drive his rivals insane with envy. Without benefit of aerial bombardment, ground smoke, artillery preparation, and airborne assistance, the Third Army at 2200 hours, Thursday evening, March 22nd, crossed the Rhine River. He signed it, leaned back, and allowed himself a rare smile. Montgomery's massive operation to the north had taken weeks to plan, involved 3 divisions, and would go down in history as a masterpiece of military logistics. Patton had just done it in one night, with the fraction of the resources and none of the fanfare. The brilliance wasn't in the tactics. River crossings have been executed thousands of times in military history. The brilliance was in the reading of the moment. Patton understood something that his more methodical colleagues often missed, that in war, audacity and timing could substitute for overwhelming force, that the enemy's expectations could be a weapon, that sometimes the best plan was the one nobody thought you'd try. The German response, when it finally came, was chaotic and desperate. At 6:30 a.m., Luftwaffe fighters attempted to strafe the bridgehead. They were met with massed anti-aircraft fire from batteries that had crossed during the night. 3 planes were shot down in the first pass. The rest turned back. At 7:45 a.m., German artillery began shelling the pontoon bridge. American counter-battery fire located and destroyed the guns within 20 minutes. By 9 a.m., a hastily assembled counterattack by elements of the 6th SS Mountain Division hit the southern edge of the bridgehead. They were stopped by entrenched American infantry, supported by tanks and tank destroyers. The attack collapsed by 10:30 a.m. with heavy German casualties. By noon on March 23rd, the bridgehead was 3 miles deep and 5 miles wide. The pontoon bridge was complete and operational. Trucks, tanks, artillery, and entire regiments were flowing across the Rhine in a steady stream. The river that was supposed to be Germany's final defensive line had been breached in a single night by an army that did it almost casually. At German high command, the realization settled in like a physical weight. General Alfred Jodl, chief of the operations staff, reviewed the reports with the kind of quiet horror reserved for moments when professional competence meets catastrophic failure. Patton had crossed with minimal losses. The bridgehead was expanding faster than German forces could react. Reserves that might have contained the breakthrough were still en route, delayed by fuel shortages and Allied air superiority. The strategic situation west of the Rhine, already dire, had just become untenable. Jodl's report to Hitler was brief and factual. American forces under General Patton had successfully crossed the Rhine at Oppenheim, current strength estimated at divisional level and growing. Counterattacks had failed. The bridgehead could not be eliminated with available forces. Hitler's response was predictable: rage, disbelief,
demands for immediate action, orders to destroy the bridgehead at any cost, threats against commanders who had allowed this to happen. But beneath the fury was something else, a recognition, unspoken but unmistakable, that the war in the West was entering its final phase. The Rhine crossing at Oppenheim didn't just breach a river, it shattered the illusion that Germany could still defend its heartland. It demonstrated that even the most formidable natural obstacles meant nothing when the defending forces lacked the strength, mobility, and coordination to exploit them. It proved that Patton's reputation for aggressive, fast-moving warfare wasn't just propaganda, it was tactical reality. On the eastern shore, American engineers worked through the day and into the following night, expanding the bridge, improving roads, establishing supply dumps. Infantry dug in and pushed the perimeter outward. Armor assembled for the drive deeper into Germany. The machinery of mobile warfare.
The machinery of mobile warfare, once unleashed, became almost impossible to stop. By March 24th, 2 full divisions were across. By March 25th, elements of Patton's Third Army were 15 miles east of the Rhine, driving toward Frankfurt. By March 28th, Frankfurt itself was under assault. The German military command structure, already strained to breaking, struggled to respond. Units were shifted frantically from sector to sector, trying to plug gaps that multiplied faster than reinforcements could arrive. Communications broke down, supply lines collapsed. Morale, already fragile, disintegrated under the relentless pressure of an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. In the war rooms and command posts scattered across what remained of the Third Reich, officers stared at maps that told a story of inevitable defeat. The Rhine had been crossed. The industrial heart of Germany lay exposed. The western and eastern fronts were collapsing simultaneously. Time, space, and options were running out. But in those first hours after the crossing, in the dark early morning of March 23rd, there had been a singular moment of professional recognition among the German commanders. A moment when career soldiers, regardless of the regime they served, acknowledged what had just been done to them. Patton had outthought them, outmaneuvered them, and out-executed them with a plan so simple and so audacious that it bypassed every defensive assumption they had built. Kesselring would later write that the Oppenheim crossing was one of the most outstanding operations of the war. High praise from a man who had spent years fighting the best the Allies could field. But in that assessment was also an admission that when it came to operational art, to the blending of risk and opportunity, George Patton had few equals. The crossing itself took less than 12 hours to secure. The planning had taken less than 2 days. The impact would echo through the remaining weeks of the European war, because after Oppenheim, there was no defensible line west of Berlin. After Oppenheim, the question wasn't whether Germany would be defeated, but how quickly the end would come. After Oppenheim, the myth of the Rhine as an impassable barrier died in the cold, dark water of a March night, killed by engineers in plywood boats and infantry who moved faster than the German command structure could react. Patton himself would cross the river on March 24th, walking across the pontoon bridge with the same casual confidence he had shown throughout the campaign. Halfway across, he stopped, looked down at the water, and made a show of urinating into the Rhine. It was vulgar, theatrical, and quintessentially Patton, a gesture of contempt for the river that was supposed to stop him and the enemy that had failed to hold it. But beneath the showmanship was the cold mathematics of operational success. Third Army had crossed the Rhine with fewer than 50 casualties. They had established a bridgehead that would become the launching point for the final drive into Germany. They had done it without the massive air and artillery support that conventional doctrine demanded. And they had done it so quickly that the German response arrived too late to matter. In the days that followed, as the bridgehead expanded and American forces pushed deeper into Germany, the initial shock at high command gave way to grim acceptance. Oppenheim wasn't just a tactical setback, it was a strategic collapse. The last natural barrier in the West had been breached. The industrial Ruhr was now cut off. The road to Berlin lay open to whoever got there first. German commanders began making calculations of a different kind, not how to stop the Americans, but how to slow them enough to surrender to them instead of the Soviets advancing from the east. In the brutal arithmetic of the war's final weeks, that distinction mattered more than any tactical victory. The Oppenheim crossing would be overshadowed in popular history by Montgomery's larger operation to the north. It would receive less attention than the dramatic drives across France or the desperate fighting in the Battle of the Bulge. But among military historians and the officers who studied it, Oppenheim represented something rare, a nearly perfect execution of offensive maneuver, the kind of operation that gets taught at staff colleges as an example of how to exploit enemy weakness with speed, deception, and overwhelming audacity. What did German High Command say when Patton crossed the Rhine in one night without air support? The words varied depending on who was speaking. Disbelief, fury, grudging respect, orders to counterattack, demands for explanations, threats and recriminations. But beneath all of it was a single, unavoidable truth that no amount of orders or rage could change. Patton had done it. The Rhine had fallen, and the war in the West was now a race against time, not a question of if, but when. In the cold, early hours of March 23, 1945, that reality settled over German headquarters like ash after a fire. The river was crossed, the enemy was across, and there was nothing left to stop them.